From athletes to authors, innovators to icons, we connect with those who help shape the South's culture, revealing the stories of their lives, their journeys, their triumphs and tragedies, what molded them into who they are today. Broadcasting across the Southeast, telling the South stories. This is where their stories live. Authentically off-script and personally illuminating. This is Audibles with Jason Scarborough. This week on Audibles, Rick Cleveland.
So October 7th, 1952, that's when we start your story in Hattiesburg. So how would you describe growing up there in Hattiesburg?
Seventh game of the 1952 World Series.
Is that when you were born?
Yeah, Mickey Mantle hit a home run. He was my mother's favorite player. She was a little bit perturbed with me because I wouldn't wait till after the game. So she missed the seventh game of the World Series. Of course, back then it was just radio. You couldn't. There wasn't television. But that's
Spoken like a true sports writer, right?
True story. Yeah.
How would you describe Rick Cleveland as a child? What were you like as a child?
I was a sports nut. Yeah, it was. I loved all of it. My dad had been, when I was born, he was the sports editor of the Hattiesburg American, and he came to Jackson for a year when I was about 3 and was the sports editor of the Jackson Daily News, and then he got out of sports writing and became the sports information director down at Southern Miss, then Mississippi Southern College. And during that time, besides being the SID, he was also the proctor of the athletic dormitory, which is back then was East Stadium Dormitory. It's actually underneath the stadium. It's still there, it's just not a dormitory anymore. So I grew up from the time I was 4 to the time I was 7. My backyard was the football field. Right across the street was the old field house where they played basketball. And to the north of the dormitory was the baseball field where they played baseball. So it wasn't exactly an upset that I was a sports nut,
So you literally grew up in the Rock.
Yeah, I grew up in the Rock. Yeah, no, that is true. Funny story, my brother stole a chicken leg off my plate, and I thought, what would my buddies down the hallway say? And I proceeded to light into him using some words that I wasn't even supposed to know. That was when I was 7, and about a month later we moved. My mama had had enough. She said, we're going to get a house. It's a true story.
It's pretty safe to say, or is it safe to say that it was in your blood? So for you to become what you became, growing up there literally inside the Rock, who your dad was, so I mean, it was in your blood.
Yeah, well, it was, and plus all the sports writers would come over to our house after the game, after the ones that would cover the Southern games, guys from the coast and from Jackson and Hattiesburg and, all the papers that covered Southern, and they'd sit and have a cocktail and talk about what they wrote, and it was just, I just ate it all up. I said, man, this, my doctor and the mailman and all the other jobs that I could think of doing, they don't seem to be having nearly as much fun as these guys. So that's as soon as I figured out I couldn't hit a curveball and wasn't going to be a major leaguer, I wanted to be a sports writer.
It was in your brother's blood too. You and your brother Bobby, close growing up.
Bobby became a sports writer, and we actually were fortunate enough to work together for over 30 years. So he followed in Dad's footsteps too, and was really good at it.
I've heard you call him the best storyteller in the family.
I'll go to my grave with that one. Bobby was. That's what we're all doing. If you're any good at doing what I do, is you got to be a good storyteller, and Bobby was. He was great, and a lot of his columns and stories read like he was telling you a story, that's the way our daddy taught us to write. Yeah.
Speaking of your dad, at age 13, you tell your dad what you want to do. You want to be a writer. I've heard you tell this story before, so for our viewers that haven't heard it, how'd that conversation go when you told your dad you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I told him we were going down Highway 11 in Hattiesburg, and there's a clover leaf there where you turn off 11 to get on 49, and when we made that turn, there was an old down on his luck guy on the side of the road that had his clothes in a paper bag and didn't look like he had shaved in quite a while, and he looked pretty rough. And he smiled at us as we went by, and he didn't have any teeth. And I remember we got on down the road about 50, 75 yards, and my daddy said, "Did you know that guy?" And I said, "No." And Dad said, "Well, I did." And I said, "Who wasn't it?" He said, "He's an ex-sports writer." In his own way, Daddy was telling me, you can do better than that. And he actually did. The way he put it later was, if you're smart enough to be a sports writer and do it well, you can make a whole lot more money doing something else. That was 57 years ago, and I can tell you that he was dead on. He was right.
It didn't deter you though, because at 13, you enrolled to take typing classes at Southern Miss so you could go and write part-time. So it didn't deter you.
Yeah, when one of the prerequisites for being a stringer at the Hattiesburg American is you had to be able to type. And at 13, I could do this, but I couldn't really type. So it wasn't offered at Tim's Junior High, which was where I went to 7th, 8th grade. So at summer school, I enrolled in a typing class at Southern. And I got to tell you, when I was in 7th grade, I was probably not even 5 feet tall and weighed about 90 pounds. So I got some looks when I walked into that class. But it turned out I learned how to type, and when I took typing in the 10th grade, I was straight A's.
You and John Forcade have the distinction of doing something at age 13 that most 13-year-olds don't have. Like, you're writing for a major publication part-time at your age. You're in typing classes at a local university, covering all these sporting events. Forcade quarterbacked his varsity team at age 13. He was talking about seeing guys with beards. He'd never seen that before. I mean, you being that age and writing, going to Southern Miss and that's a story in and of itself, is it not?
I guess, but I know John Forcade well enough. He was probably doing a lot of things I didn't do at age 13.
That might be one of the greatest comments I've ever heard Rick Cleveland say.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
Mississippi farmers raise over 800,000 head of cattle each year. We take care of our livestock so you get what's good for your family on your table. We are only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day. Mississippi needs farmers. The Farm Families of Mississippi.
At Atmos Energy, we believe affordable, reliable, and efficient natural gas is essential to achieving a low-carbon energy future. We're committed to helping protect the environment by providing smart choice solutions to help customers reduce energy use and lower their carbon footprint. Get a rebate up to $600 off qualifying high-efficiency natural gas appliances, smart thermostats, and weatherization upgrades. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
Want to take college classes? It's not too late to register at Holmes CC. We have classes that start throughout the semester. You can sign up online or swing by one of our campuses anytime. Holmes Community College, where you could come tuition-free with a 20 on your ACT. Enroll today at holmescc.edu.
So you're working part-time. I'm going to scoot on up a little bit. You're working part-time at the Hattiesburg American, age 17, and you get an assignment that I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. You get sent to Tuscaloosa to write a story, if I remember it right, write a column or a story on Bear Bryant.
You've done a lot of homework.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was 17, was a freshman at Southern Miss. I'd started first grade when I was 5. So I was a year ahead of where I was supposed to be. So I'm 17 and working for the Hattiesburg American, and they want me to go over to Tuscaloosa and do Bear Bryant's weekly press conference. They were playing Southern Miss and that week. And so, yeah, I did. I had made enough money where I bought me a little Ford Pinto. And I take off for Tuscaloosa. It's early September, South Mississippi. It's 100 degrees. I get just the other side of Meridian and had a flat tire, which for whatever reason, I was having trouble changing that flat tire, and I got grease all over me, and I was 30 minutes late when I got there to the Alabama's athletic department. The press conference was over. And Charlie Thornton was the guy at Alabama who did what my dad did at Southern. He was the sports information director, and he saw me come in and said, "What's the deal?" And I said, "Mr. Thornton, I had a flat tire, and if I can't talk to Bear Bryant, they're gonna probably fire me back in." They wouldn't have, but that was I went with that story. And he said, "Let me see what I can do." And he walks back down the hallway and comes back out, and he says, "Man, I got good news for you. You can have Coach Bryant all along back in his office." So I walk back there. He leads me back there. Again, I am soaked through with sweat. I got grease all over me. I walk in there, and there's Bear Bryant. He's got his shoes off. His feet are up on his desk, and he's got a box of barbecue ribs, which I'm guessing now probably came from Dreamland. And he's chomping on ribs, and he said, "You're Ace's boy, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, what can I do for you?" And then he said, "Is your mama as pretty as she always has been?" And I said, "Yes, sir, she is." And he said, "Well, let's get going. Tell me what you need to know." And I froze. I had thought all the way over about what I was going to ask him and everything, and then right there in that moment, I just froze, and I'm looking at him, and a grin comes, his lips curl into a grin, and he says, "Oh shit, son, spit it out." And that was what that jolted me, and we had a great talk. We had a great interview, and he couldn't have been nicer. And when it was over, he said, "Well, we're about to practice. You want to come out to practice?" And I said, "Oh, sure." And I rode the golf cart with him out to practice. We get to the tower. He says, "Come on up here." He took me up on the tower. And then when it came time for me to leave after practice, he says, "You still got you only have 4 tires. You got to go back to Hattiesburg." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Give me your notebook." So he writes down the name of a tire store and the guy that runs it, and says, "You go see him right now, and he'll take care of it. You just tell him I sent you." So I go there, they fix my tire, put it back on the car, put the spare back in the trunk. I get ready to pay. They said, "Coach Bryant sent you, there ain't no charge." So I covered Bear Bryant's funeral, and I can tell you he was my hero to the day he died.
That's remarkable. So you've got all these experiences. You start writing at 13. You spend time with a legend, Bear Bryant, still a legend to this day. So you graduate Southern Miss. So what was next for Rick Cleveland when you left Southern Miss?
Well, I was already the sports editor of the Hattiesburg American when I graduated at Southern, and I stayed there till I was I guess 27, and I got a call from the newspapers in Monroe, Louisiana. They had two papers, the morning paper and the afternoon paper, and they wanted me to come be the sports editor over both of them. And it was a promotion and more money, and I thought I probably needed to get out of Hattiesburg, and I took that job and spent a year covering LSU and Louisiana Tech and Northeast Louisiana, now Louisiana Monroe. And John David Crow was the head football coach and athletic director at Louisiana Monroe, or back then it was Northeast. Eddie Robinson was the coach at Grambling. Maxie Lambright, a great coach, was at Louisiana Tech. Charlie McClendon's last year at LSU. So I had a good year over there. And then an opening came at the Clarion Ledger, and Tom Patterson, who was in the sports editor, called and said, "Would you like to come back to Miss?" Actually, he didn't call. We were at the Associated Press sports editors meeting in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Monroe paper had sent me up there not knowing that I was going to get offered a job. And Tom offered me a job. It was the same money as I was making as the executive sports editor in Monroe, but I wanted to come back to Mississippi, and so I came back, and I've been in Jackson ever since.
You've covered a ton of high school sports in your career, and I've always heard you say, because obviously for me growing up and a lot of folks my age, you were our source of sports information. So I've read a ton of articles that you've done over the years on high school sports, a ton of columns. One of your favorite events is the 1A high school state football championship game.
It's my favorite event.
Your favorite of all?
Favorite. I've covered almost 30 Super Bowls, but I've got a lot better memories of 1A championship games. People, I tell that to people, and they say, "Oh, that can't be true. You wouldn't rather do a 1A game than the Super Bowl." And well, yeah, I would. It's a lot more, to me, it's a lot more poignant. I walk the field. I walk the sidelines when I'm doing it. Those kids had never been covered at all. If you're at the Super Bowl, you got 3,000 reporters all trying to get the story. And it's just, it's magical to me that won a championship game. You got, I remember one game, one year I'm covering a Weir, W-E-I-R versus Mize. And they've got a 112-pound cornerback that every once in a while they move into nose guard because nobody can block him. He's so quick, nobody can block him. He's in the backfield for the center, knows what's going on. And you just don't, you can't see stuff like that in any other level. I remember that same year they had a 112-pound defensive star, and their quarterback is like 5'6" and weighs 190. I mean, it's terrific, and plus it just matters so much to everybody on the field and everybody in the stands.
Who is the best high school football player that you've seen or covered?
The best high school football player that I've covered is Cam Akers at Clinton. I mean, and people say, well, didn't you cover Marcus Dupree? Well, I didn't really. I never went to one of his high school games, and he was otherworldly. He was special. And they say, didn't you cover Walter Payton? Well, I took the reports of his games on the phone. You know, Columbia was 30 miles away from Hattiesburg. And Dupree and Payton were special. The thing that about Cam Akers is that besides being a fabulous runner and a guy they used in key defensive situations as a corner, he could throw it. I mean, he could throw it 65 yards on a dime. He's the best I ever covered.
I've heard this story, and I had to ask you about it. 1984, you probably know where I'm going, the Mississippi Valley Alcorn State game. Both teams were nationally ranked, had great athletes, and the game was scheduled to be played in Itabena. I think I've heard you say the stadium may have held 6,000, 7,000.
I think at the time it sat 8,000.
Okay, so 8,000. You basically voiced your concern, opinion, and you had a big hand in getting that game moved to where more people could see it, and got it moved to Veterans Memorial Stadium.
Well, it was my idea, and I did write a column about it and said that I ought to move it, and then come to find out there was a doubleheader at Memorial Stadium that Saturday, so I called Barney Poole at the stadium, the great Ole Miss and NFL end, who at that time was the general manager of Memorial Stadium. I said, Barney, is there any rule against playing on Sunday? He said, no, not that I know of. And so I called Marino Chasm, who was the AD and football coach at Alcorn, and of course he was more than ready to play in Jackson instead of Itabena. And I called Archie Cooley and told him, you know, you'll have 60,000 people. It'd be the biggest payday in school history. He really, you know, as a coach, he really, I think, would have preferred to play it in Itabena, but he also saw, you know, the dollar signs and the media attention he would get, and they agreed to play it in there, and it remains, in my mind, one of the great days in the history of Mississippi football. Fantastic game. Claire and Ledger, we rented a helicopter and shot that photo from above the stadium, and you can't even tell where the aisles are. People were sitting in every aisle. It was amazing. And if you were there, what was really amazing is that how many white people were there. Because I've been going to SWAC games for a long time, and very, very seldom do you see more than a sprinkling of white people, but that day, there were thousands of white people at the game. They'd been reading about, both teams were undefeated. Jerry Rice was catching 18 passes a game, Willie Totten was throwing for 500 and 600 yards in a game, and people showed up.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
When it comes to choosing energy for your family and your home, make the smart choice with natural gas from Atmos Energy. It's efficient and reliable energy that's essential for today and generations to come. You can count on affordable natural gas to help you save money and keep you comfortable while fueling your dream home. So make the smart choice and talk to a builder today about including natural gas. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
From our view on this farm, food security is national security. Our nation must have a sustainable food source. Keeping the supply chain moving and food on our grocery store shelves by growing the cleanest food in the world.
We're only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day because Mississippi needs us. Mississippi needs farmers, the farm families of Mississippi.
I stand alone with fire and sun, with passion burning in my veins.
Looking for your next unforgettable experience? Come explore Cypress Point, Mississippi's premier event venue, offering breathtaking spaces for weddings, gatherings, and special moments. Get wild on our one-of-a-kind safari tours, where adventure is just a ride away. Then kick back at the tavern, where great food, cold drinks, and good times are always on the menu. And don't miss the live music every week at Cameron's Garage, the new hot spot for the best local tunes and late-night fun. Experience it all at Cypress Point, where memories are made and adventure is just the beginning.
Ole Miss and Mississippi State going back to back, winning national championships in baseball. I mean, you referenced how long you've been doing this earlier. Did you ever think, honestly, that this state would see any team, basketball, baseball, football, go back to back like Mississippi State and Ole Miss did?
No, I didn't. But I also knew if it happened, it was going to happen in college baseball, because that's what we do best in Mississippi. If you're talking about college, a lot of people say we're a football state and all that, but what we do best in Mississippi is college baseball. And I'm not just talking about wins and losses. I'm talking about the way it's supported. The fact that all State and Ole Miss are in the top 3 or 4 schools in the country in attendance. Southern Miss is in the top 15. Delta State is traditionally a Division II powerhouse. It's what we do best.
Who is the best baseball team? It's hard to say that these two are not the best you've covered.
Well, they're not.
They're not. So who is the best baseball team?
1985 Mississippi State team that didn't, God almighty, think about it. Rafael Palmeira, Will Clark, Jeff Brantley, Bobby Thigpen on the same college baseball team. I don't think there's ever been a college baseball team with that much talent. Those were the 4 guys who became major league heroes. But they had a lot of players that were really, really good. And I kid Ron Polk sometimes, Ron, you're so good. You had the best team in college baseball history, and you couldn't even win the College World Series. Now, that's, I'm kidding, because it's baseball, and anything can happen in baseball. I think there have been better teams at Mississippi State than the one that won the College World Series, and I think there's been better teams at Ole Miss than the team that won the College World Series. Hell, they were a 3 seed, you know, in a regional. I mean, I remember that team, I can't remember what year it was, but the one that had to play Texas in a super regional, that would probably be the second best college baseball team I ever saw.
We're blessed or cursed, I guess, depending on how you look at it. Social media, technology, we just have this treasure trove of information continuously. Do you look back ever at before those days when you and your dad and your brother were all writing, well before technology, well, at least the way we know it now, social media, where now we've got it right at our fingertips. It's not always right information either. Is it more impressive that you guys didn't have that information at your fingertips so readily there? Do you kind of think it's more impressive, at least I do, that you guys were able to get the stories out, get the columns out with all the information that it had as quick as you did sometimes as well without all of this?
Well, it was harder. Yeah. It was way harder. Yeah. You know, first thing you had to do, there weren't elevators to the press box, so you had to carry a 40-pound manual typewriter up the steps. Hemingway Stadium was the worst because it was way up there. You know, Scottsville was not great, and even Southern Stadium, it was a long way up to carry a typewriter. I mean, I grew up where you would type a page, take it out, and give it to Western Union, and they would retype it and send it to the Western Union station back wherever you were sending it to. And you know, by the time it came out in the newspaper, you just hoped nothing had been lost in translation. And if you didn't do it that way, then you had to read it. You know, you typed it, and then at the end, after you finally finished the story, you read it to somebody who took dictation back at the paper. And now, you know, you hit a button, and it's there in front of them at the paper. But you know, you didn't have the reference. I mean, you know, you can Google something, and it's like being at the library. You know, it's duck soup now compared to what it used to be.
So we talked about how one of your columns basically changed the location of a big game. The building we're sitting in, Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame Museum. Special thanks to the folks here, obviously, for letting us do this interview here. And you had put the idea out there needed to be somewhere to house basically all of these trophies and plaques and memorabilia that we see here now, memorializing these teams and these squads and these athletes that have come through. That was your idea too.
Well, I went to cover the high school basketball tournament at the old Coliseum. You may remember this, and you may be too young to remember it, but the way the Hall of Fame, Mississippi Sports Hall of Famers were recognized was their plaques hung around the lobbies and the hallways of the Coliseum. They hung on the wall. The sun came through and bleached them out. I mean, you couldn't. With a state that's got as much history and as much so many accomplished athletes as Mississippi has, it just seemed like a terrible way to honor. And I did. I wrote a column, said we need to do better. We need to have a Hall of Fame. And but the man who made it happen was Jim Buck Ross, who was the agricultural commissioner and a Dizzy Dean fan and Boo Ferris fan. And he called me up. I was at the Clarion Ledger, and he called me up and said, Mr. Cleveland, did you write that column this morning? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, I kind of like that idea. Can you be at my office in 10 minutes? And I made it. I had to run a red light or two to get there. And when I got there, he had this plan of how he raised the money to have. He said he already had the land here next to the Agricultural Museum. He controlled the soft drink rights to the fairgrounds and Memorial Stadium and the Mississippi Coliseum. He was going to rebid those rights and take the money, and he already knew he could get $1 million at that time. It was a lot of money back then. Now you can't do an add-on for anywhere close to $1 million. Back then it was good seed money for the Coliseum. And I said, well, Commissioner, with all due respect, Coca-Cola already has the rights. And he said, yeah, son, they do, but they fixing to pay a whole lot more. And to make a long story short, they did pay a lot more, and here's the result of it, you know.
And you were executive director here from 2012, 2016, if I have the dates right. And just knowing the passion that you have in telling the stories of this state, the athletes, teams in this state, kind of what was your method of operation as executive director here in telling those stories?
Essentially, that's what I've been doing all my life. It was just, you know, this is a different way of telling them, but I do think it helped me that I already knew this, you know, I'd written most of the stories. Right. So I knew the people, and with most of them I had really good relationships. It really was a labor of love. At the same time, I'll tell you that it was the hardest work I've ever done. This is a 27,000 square foot building that, you know, at that time we had a 4-person staff. I think maybe they have 5 now. But, and we're open like 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And there's constant, you know, there's things that have to be fixed. There's things that, you know, it's a big job. I always felt, you know, my title was executive director. I thought it should probably be chief fundraiser because, you know, we didn't take money from the state. And so we had to raise the money we operated on. But I'm proud of it, and I'm still, every time I'm in this building, you know, and look around, it's pretty cool.
It's pretty remarkable, is what it is.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
From the seed and the soil grows row after row. We take care of this land, using just the right amount of our natural resources and never more than we need.
We're only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day. Because Mississippi needs us. Mississippi needs farmers, the farm families of Mississippi.
At Atmos Energy, we believe affordable, reliable, and efficient natural gas is essential to achieving a low-carbon energy future. We're committed to helping protect the environment by providing smart choice solutions to help customers reduce energy use and lower their carbon footprint. Get a rebate up to $600 off qualifying high-efficiency natural gas appliances, smart thermostats, and weatherization upgrades. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
Want to take college classes? It's not too late to register at Holmes CC. We have classes that start throughout the semester. You can sign up online or swing by one of our campuses anytime. Holmes Community College, where you could come tuition-free with a 20 on your ACT. Enroll today at holmescc.edu.
You're known for sports, but there's got to be a story, because you get to do some cool things now from Mississippi Today. There's got to be a non-sports story. I've heard about the Yazoo City tornado story. Heard a lot about that. Is there a non-sports story that, I don't want to say your favorite, that's going to be hard to narrow down, but is there a story that kind of sticks out in your mind that's a non-sports story that is memorable to you?
Well, there's several, but probably the most memorable, I was still at the Clarion Ledger when Katrina hit. And the paper, the editor asked me if I would go down there and spend a week on the coast to just do the kind of stuff I do on Athlete, you know, like tell stories about people and how they're coping. And yeah, that was, you know, I think sports writing is great training for any kind of writing. You look, I'm in no way comparing myself to any of these people, but Hemingway was a sports writer. Willie Morris in Mississippi started writing for the Yazoo Herald when he was 13 years old. A lot of the greatest writers in the English language actually wrote sports at some point in their careers. And I think sports is great training because everything happens in front of you. I mean, you see it all happen, and what you're doing is describing what happened, and I just think it's great training. And, you know, people, the judges that series I did from Katrina won some big national award, and the judges pointed out that it was a sports writer who had written it. And shit, if you can write sports, you can write about anything. You know, you're just telling stories. So that was one. I jumped out of an airplane one time and wrote about that. I covered an execution at Parchman. I don't ever want to do that again, you know. So yeah, but you know, I've covered at the Clarion Ledger. At the end of the time I was there, they were sending me to do on election night. I covered Kirk Fordyce's the big upset when he became the governor. I think they sent me because they didn't think there was any chance he was going to win.
Just kind of a snowball, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I love doing other stuff besides sports.
I hear that you could be a chef. Tyler, here's your plug, by the way, when you watch this. But I've heard that you're a pretty good chef. So, what's your go-to dish?
Well, I learned to cook from my dad, and he started out cooking outdoor. I mean, anything that's grilled outdoors, I can do. My brother was better than I am. I'll go right and tell you right off the front end. But like, last night I cooked. Turkey and andouille gumbo with the leftover turkey.
So we know where we're going when we finish this interview.
It's all gone. It all got it. But yeah, I love to cook. Nothing is as instantly gratifying as cooking a good meal.
I've heard you quote or talk about your mom when you were getting started in this, and she talked about, and if I don't get it quite right, correct me, you were never really focused on the X's and O's when you're covering a story. You were talking about or focused more on the people and telling their stories. And your mom would remind you these are people that have strengths and weaknesses, and they're human.
Yeah, the human side of sport. My mama was a huge sports fan.
Really?
She loved the Saints. She loved the Yankees, but switched to the Braves after they moved to Atlanta. But she did not care anything about the X's and O's. She loved the passion of sports. And I think most people are that way. And Willie Morris, who was a great friend and mentor to me, told me one time that he always wrote with us. He didn't think about writing for the world. He didn't think about all the people that were going to read his stuff. He thought he was a much better writer when he wrote for one person. He said he always had somebody in mind when he was writing. And so I started to do that, and most times the person I have in mind is my mama. Because of how big a fan she was, and the fact that what she loved so much about sports was the human condition.
You have an interesting story that you'll always be able to carry. You were able to work with your dad, your brother Bobby, and now your son Tyler.
Yeah.
That's it. That's crazy. That's a story in and of itself.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing, and I will tell you that probably the best writer in our family is my daughter Annie, who happens to be in law school. Yeah.
She decided to take your dad's advice from way back when and go do something else. Is that it?
Well, she was, but she could be writing anywhere for a living. She's that good. But her dream was to be an actress, and she was in Chicago a stage actress until the COVID. And when the theaters all shut down, she took the LSAT and knocked it out of the park. And now she's a second-year law student at Tulane. She's going to be a hell of a lawyer.
Final question for you. I know how much your dad meant to you. What do you think Mr. Ace would think of, well, first of all, the building we're sitting in which he's honored, both of you were honored in this building. But what do you think Mr. Ace would think about your career, all that you've gotten to do, and this building, everything that encompasses the Cleveland legacy?
He'd probably wisecrack and say, "See, I told you should be a sports writer." No, he'd be proud. I mean, he'd be proud. He was. I know. When he died, he was proud of Bobby and me both. You know, I mean, I told Tyler the same things Daddy told me. You can make a whole lot more money doing something else. But at the same time, when Tyler decided to do the same thing that everybody else in our family had done, there's a certain amount of pride I take in that too.
I want to thank you for doing this, because got to know you a little bit over the last few years. For me, growing up, being a sports nut, you were my go-to. Reading you in the Clarion Ledger, for me and so many folks my age, that was our go-to. We didn't have Twitter and Facebook and all this other stuff. What's Rick talking about? What's he saying about the game? What's he saying about our high school team? So I want to thank you for taking some time to do this with us.
Appreciate it, Jay. I'll tell you this. I have a lot of people older than you. I have a lot of gray-haired, bald-headed people who tell me they grew up reading my...
I appreciate you doing this. For me, it was a thrill, and growing up, I've still got so many newspaper articles of yours cut out of memory. So this is a great thrill of mine.
I appreciate. I'm flattered and grateful to do it.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm looking at you when I talk.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you get the tree? You said you had a tree come down. Did you get it?
I had to get somebody in there. I don't have a chainsaw, so yeah.
That sucks.
Real stories, real legends. The South's own storytelling show. Join us next week for another episode of Audibles with Jason Scarborough.